You don't feel the split when it first happens. It's subtle, like forgetting why you entered a room, but the feeling doesn't fade when you leave. Like deja vu, but instead of recognizing the place, you recognize yourself. Twice, standing there, watching yourself walk past, but you're still you. It doesn't make sense. And that's how it begins. The human brain wasn't built for perfect continuity. Thoughts skip, memories distort. But for most people, there's a fragile illusion of a single self, a thread tying everything together. You wake up, you live a day, you go to sleep. It feels like a straight line. But for some, that thread snaps. There's a psychological phenomenon under-researched, misunderstood, known as heotoscopy. It's not just seeing yourself from the outside. It's being in two places, mentally, at once. As if your awareness stretches past your body. As if something inside you was meant to split, and now it has. You're at your desk, typing an email, but you also feel like you're still in bed, struggling to wake up. The confusion isn't just sensory, it's existential. Which one is the real you? And then it gets stranger. You remember speaking in a meeting that hasn't happened yet. And later, when you're there, saying it exactly the way you remember. Only, it feels less like memory and more like reliving something. A loop, but no one else notices. Because to them, you're just acting normal. To them, there's only one of you. But inside, you feel it. The pull, the dissonance, the pressure of being here and there, of watching yourself from nowhere at all. At first, it seems like stress, maybe sleep deprivation, maybe a side effect of overwork or anxiety, but that doesn't explain the consistency. That doesn't explain why the other you seems aware, because it's not just an image, not just a hallucination. It's a full sense of presence. Like your consciousness is trying to occupy too many coordinates at once. A single hard drive running multiple conflicting operating systems. And eventually it starts to crash. You start avoiding mirrors. You begin hesitating before entering rooms because you're afraid the other version will already be inside, not just standing there doing things, living out your life, slightly differently, better, worse. It doesn't matter. You no longer know which version of you has the right to exist. And that's only the beginning. You wake up in your bed, but it doesn't feel like the first time. There's a lag, a discomfort, like your body's return before your mind. You blink, but your eyelids feel delayed. Your thoughts pick up halfway through a sentence you don't remember starting. And something's wrong with the room. The layout is the same, the walls, the light, the shadows on the floor, but the atmosphere is off. You know this feeling, but you don't know why. It's like you've just arrived in a copy of your life, one made from memory, not matter. And the mirror doesn't reflect what you expect. You lean toward it, but what's staring back doesn't quite match the movement. It's subtle, a few milliseconds behind, then ahead, then still while you're not. You raise your right hand, the reflection raises its left. Then, both your hands drop, and neither of you moved. You turn away in fear, heart pounding. But as you move through the apartment, you sense that you have already done all of this today. Every gesture feels rehearsed. Every step echoes with memory that isn't yours or is. You try to ground yourself. Touch the countertop. Splash cold water on your face. Call a friend. You force the illusion to break, but it doesn't, because it isn't an illusion anymore. Later that day, you're speaking to someone, maybe a coworker, maybe your partner, but their words come through twice. The first time, before they speak. The second time, as they speak, like the moment is happening again. Like you already lived it and now you're just remembering. But the memory didn't exist 10 seconds ago. You start asking yourself, am I always late to my own experience? Or am I ahead of it, remembering a future I haven't lived? The phenomenon has a name in neurology, autoscopic doubles, but textbooks simplify it. They don't describe the emotional erosion. They don't tell you how it feels when your own memories betray you, not by fading, but by multiplying. They don't explain the guilt of being in two lives at once while living neither. Eventually, you stop trusting your body. You walk into a room and pause because you feel yourself already sitting on the couch. And when you sit, you swear for half a second you are already standing again. There's no clear timeline anymore. Your days don't follow cause and effect. They spiral. At night, the dreams get worse. You see yourself in third person, walking through your house, opening doors, sitting at your desk, wearing your clothes, saying your thoughts out loud before you think them. You wake up drenched in sweat, unable to shake the sensation that you are being watched by yourself. And you realize you're not sharing your consciousness. You're splitting it. Not schizophrenic, not psychotic, just misaligned, like a projector with the lens nudged just enough to show two blurred versions of the same film. And both versions are starting to want different things. There's a moment when you stop asking why this is happening, because the questions become too layered to follow. Because you've asked them already, maybe days ago, maybe 5 minutes in the future, because the you who started asking might not be the one who's still listening. And that's when the real fracture begins. It's not a loud break, not the shattering of glass. It's quieter, like the click of a lock turning from the inside. You feel something in your mind pull away, not severed, but distanced, like one part of you is stepping back while the other continues forward. You're doing your daily routine, walking down the street, buying groceries, making eye contact with the cashier, but you're not inside your body. You're hovering next to it, not in a spiritual way, not an out-of-body mystical journey, just dislocated. You watch your hand reach for the produce. You hear your mouth say, "Thank you," but you feel none of it because the part of you that feels is somewhere else entirely. And the scariest part is it doesn't feel like dissociation. It feels like delegation. Like the person you used to be is slowly giving up tasks to someone else, letting them take over, letting them speak for you, move for you, decide for you, because it's easier, because it's exhausting to keep all your versions in sync, because no one ever taught you how to live a life in parallel. One night, you sit in front of the TV, but you don't turn it on, because the you who would have cared is gone. Instead, a different self sits there, the version of you who doesn't need noise, doesn't want comfort, doesn't even blink anymore when silence lingers too long. They're better at this. They can handle the loops, the fractured time, the dissonant memory, so you let them take over. And you start to hear thoughts that aren't yours, not voices, not hallucinations, just priorities, shifting, actions being taken that don't feel like decisions, responses coming out of your mouth before you know what they mean. It's not possession. It's not madness. It's something more clinical and far more terrifying. Your personality is fragmenting, split not by trauma, but by pressure. The pressure of having to exist in one body while your mind expands into two timelines, three identities, five layers of perception, all overlapping, all waiting to be the dominant one. And when you speak to a therapist, if you still trust one, they might ask, "Do you feel like you're living someone else's life?" But the real answer is worse. You feel like you're living all your lives at once, and every one of them is starting to compete for control. At first, it feels like adaptation, like your brain is just learning to handle more stress, more thoughts, more roles, more contradictions. You think, this is what growth looks like. You believe, this is me becoming stronger, but it's not. It's you dividing. And the signs were subtle. You forget what time it was, not because you were distracted, but because you didn't know which version of yourself was keeping track. You leave a room, then come back, and something will be off. An object moved, a light left on, a message typed that you don't remember writing. You blame stress. You blame exhaustion. You blame the blur of days that all look the same. But somewhere In the space between those excuses, something else has taken root. The you that wants control and the you that wants to disappear are no longer the same. And soon, they don't agree. One of you wants to keep going, hold a job, smile at neighbors. The other wants to stay in bed, count the shadows on the wall, avoid eye contact because it feels like a test you're about to fail. You think it's just mood swings, but then you find yourself defending thoughts you didn't believe yesterday. You argue with people and forget why. You say things in a tone that doesn't sound like yours, cold, manipulative, calculating, and afterward, you feel empty, not guilty, not angry, just absent, as if someone else had borrowed your mouth and your thoughts and your ability to care and then gave them back, slightly more damaged than before. You tell yourself it's stress. You laugh about needing a break, but deep down, you feel it. There's someone else in there now, and they're not going away. They make decisions. They choose silence over confrontation. They lie effortlessly not to deceive, but because truth doesn't feel necessary anymore. You've stopped reacting like you used to. Your instincts are dull. Your emotions are rehearsed. And worst of all, sometimes when you look in the mirror, you pause. Not because you don't recognize the face, but because, just for a second, you don't know which version of yourself you're seeing. And that second is growing longer. It's becoming a minute. Then a moment that stretches too wide to escape. A sensation that your reflection is more stable than your thoughts and that maybe the person in the mirror has always been in control. You swallow hard. You breathe. You smile like nothing's wrong because that's what they do. And somewhere far beneath the surface of your own mind, you start to wonder, what if the original version of me isn't the one driving anymore? What if the split is already complete, but you won't say it out loud? Because if you admit it, even once, you'll never get your mind back. You stand in a hallway that shouldn't exist. You know this because you recognize the smell disinfectant, cheap linoleum, and something faintly metallic, but you have no memory of entering the building. The fluorescent lights above you flicker slightly, not enough to plunge the space into darkness, but enough to destabilize your perception of time. Each flicker feels like a skipped second, a skipped breath, a skipped version of you. You begin walking. You pass closed doors on either side. Some are numbered, others not. One is open just a crack, but you don't look inside. You already know what you'll see. You, but not this version. One of the others. One of the silent ones. The ones who watch you from reflections that don't belong to mirrors. Your memories have begun to fray at the edges. Not just forgotten details, but structural ruptures. You remember calling someone named Anna, but you also remember never meeting her. You remember a fight in a kitchen filled with sunlight, but the same kitchen was underground, with no windows, and you were alone. You've stopped trying to reconcile these things. You've started documenting them instead. Each version of reality now has its own notebook. You have 11 so far, and in every one your handwriting is slightly different. Sometimes round and clean, other times sharp and angry, as if written by someone who didn't want to be found. You wonder which version of you resents the others. You wonder which one is most real. You wonder which one committed the thing you can't bring yourself to say out loud. They all remember different versions of the event. Some say the door was forced open. Others say the key was already in your hand. One says you were crying. Another says you were smiling. None of them tell you what was on the other side. None of them agree on what you saw. But you all scream at the same time in your sleep. That, at least, is consistent. Doctors told you it was dissociation, that you were compartmentalizing trauma, splitting your identity to survive. But that was months ago. Now, the splits feel autonomous. Now, when you wake up in a room you don't remember entering, wearing clothes you never bought, you stop asking questions. You've begun to understand that some part of you knows. Some part of you is carrying out a plan the rest of you isn't allowed to know. And when you pass mirrors now, you don't flinch anymore. You look, you make eye contact with them, you nod. Because this fractured existence, this shattered identity has become more familiar than anything else. You don't know which version of you is telling this story. You just know it's not the first, and definitely not the last. Because even now, as your hand stops writing, you feel someone else watching from inside your eyes, waiting for their turn to be you